Hypotheticals. You thought we were done? We're not. So,
time to bitch about random abstract shit. Go.
Well, this one at least isn't abstract. This at least actually happened.
True.
So occasionally we get asked about our content warnings on our server, and what that means, and if we should add more stuff to it. All right. At the moment, our general thing with content warnings is, hey, if it involves some form of violence, emotional, sexual, physical, whatever, that should get spoilered. And if there's something related to that didn't get spoilered and somebody requests it, just go ahead and be nice and spoiler it. No big deal. Or use a thread. Okay. So content warning for the video is probably, hey, we'll be talking, about these things and flashbacks and about triggers, but not necessarily going into details. About actual, as much as like a personal situation, so much as just around that topic.
Sorry, I was reading chat with outro. This is idealism.
What?
Sorry, the fact that you're using like actual argumentation and hypotheticals, you're going into idealism. Non-compete would not approve.
Oh my God.
Continue. Sorry. They're gonna make those jokes. This is gonna be a joke forever on the internet.
Good. I just didn't know where I was reading, and I hate those deals because now I feel like I gotta preface every goddamn statement that I make because they're like, we need this backed in reality, and when I say it, I mean no. Actually, show up to bang with fucking data and explanation. What they mean is, we're just gonna validate all this shit because we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Ways to get Zena very cranky and off topic. The actual talk about tonight's video is more with content warnings, okay? And so the question that we get is should you also ban individual topics? Okay. I have seen other servers. I've heard about other servers run with like a blacklist or a list of topics to avoid. We're a bit different on that, and I want to give some context here to like flashbacks and panic attacks. Okay, because I think you need a good understanding about how those actually function when you're deciding, hey, for a large community, what rules can I actually make? All right, and this is where I need Jess's help because I'm a little out of it at this point.
Sure.
It's important to understand, though, that with flashbacks, your brain can basically glomp onto any number of things that could be triggering for you. And those triggers can take a lot of different shapes. And these things aren't always necessarily like a rational thing. Okay? And so especially like my triggers, like it'd be like there's no way like a community could like possibly know everything to avoid and like keep me safe in that way. In fact, that wouldn't really help me at all, right? Like I would never really have a chance to work through stuff. It would stunt conversation to the point where like, hey, we just couldn't talk about like tons of topics that would otherwise be really good for people. You want to kind of fill in and help me out a little bit here?
Yeah, what do you want me to fill in specifically? So far, you're doing good.
I don't know. Is there any context needed, or just
for which one specifically?
Like flashbacks, or I think some of the specific examples we've had are like, should we add like canceling to our list of banned topics? I think, and again, I'm not picking on anybody. Legit question. I actually think this is a really good thing to examine because it, again, needs some, extra knowledge about how these things actually work.
Yeah. So in the hypothetical there, what you're assuming is, we start to espouse very abstracted content warnings, like away from things like assault and very reasonable things, there is always going to be a problem with who is the demographic that's being harmed by this. Like, someone could be harmed by canceling, but anyone who's been canceled, be it Voosh or Contra or anyone else, the idea that they're going to have a trigger around this, while theoretically possible, I just don't know if there's a demographic necessary. So to enforce that on a server-wide thing, when nobody's impacted by it, seems weird to me. This is where we get into the idea that this could create harm, but again, does it? What is the material outcome? That's the question I always ask with stuff in our house is what is the material effect? Because sometimes it's very easy due to emotions and due to like personal biases and things like that to get wound up on things. Me and you talk about this all the time that I'll get really wound up and upset about a thing and I'll have to process it in real time. Sometimes you have to look, okay, yeah, I'm really bothered by this, but is that legitimate to what's actually happening? Sure, someone could be triggered by canceling, but I don't think that's going to come up enough to institute a server-wide rule. Much like the thing we were just talking about. There's no need to put a server-wide rule against genital preferences. One, because that's not how we think. But two, that establishes a weird precedent with people expressing their own desires. Someone may express a genital preference and that may be a temporary thing for them, but to badger them or establish rules and say you're being this way seems weird. It doesn't allow for context and nuance. Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, and I think with too many, not nuance, but with too many like different content warnings and different things to avoid, you end up in a place instead where now our community is kind of walking on eggshells, right? Hey, shit, can I talk about this? Is this okay to mention? Can I bring this up? And we're a little different that we really do want people to be able to like explore new topics, come into contact with different ideas, have disagreements, and have healthy conflict resolution, right? To have a space where like, okay, maybe I did get triggered during this argument, right? Maybe this argument really bothered me, but having a place where that's okay. It's okay to work through that, to be like, hey, I need a break. I want to come back to this later, and still have, everything in your servers, be just fine after that. That's our goal. That's what we want. And so we don't want to like accidentally, prevent that from happening either. And we get into the other side with like, with too many requests for individual triggers, whose responsibility is that trigger, right? Is that the individual's responsibility to find a therapist, to work with them, to decide their own level of engagement with online spaces, right? Or is it the Discord community's, responsibility to manage? There's no way that Jess and I could, mitigate things for every single person coming in. We just can't, right? There's a couple hundred people on the server, and there's no way that we could know exactly what things to mitigate. So with some of the more like, random stuff, no, it really does come down to the individual having to go, okay, how do I engage in online spaces, right? How do I keep myself safe or put myself in a situation where if I am triggered, I can, one, deal with that appropriately, or two, I can avoid this until, I have a chance to get with a therapist, right? Or, you end up with people who are just like, no, I'm going to skip the therapy step and just be angry about this. That happens too.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I guess it gets to a level of also responsibility in that particular case, right? Like the responsibility in this case is, at what level are we supposed to... Hold on, I'm going to pause these notifications because they've been going off for a minute. Apparently the Streamlabs just caught up to all these people subbing and we just shot up to 20, was it 23:30 or something?
Oh no, all the subs are great, but Streamlabs just did it all at once.
Yeah, did it all at once is weird. But like, at what level is the responsibility of that person? Like, we should absolutely do things to minimize harm, but at some level we get into practicality. How do you mitigate harm to things that you can't see coming? In some ways, all you can do is try to learn from them and try to adapt to them. The problem is when someone says, for example, there are theoretical people that are going to be harmed by genital preference, for example. Where are these people? There are hypothetical mole men that are going to be hurt by my clearly above ground tendencies and prejudices. Where are they? I'm not trying to be mean about that, but it's that at some level...
Well, on a practical standpoint, we can't moderate a community for somebody that isn't actually in our community, right? Like, they're not even here. We can't do anything with that, right?
Yeah, it's true. No, it's super true. Yeah, like, it's just how do you make that work? How do you do that? Like, there's just a lot of stuff there that is, I think, I'm going to say really hard to deal with, because again, you're trying to mitigate harm in a way that is you're trying to mitigate harm in a proactive way, but that proactivity sometimes leads to sort of negative conclusions.
Yes, and I know we've definitely heard stories, and people have probably seen examples where some of the stuff can go toxic, right? When they're conflating like the triggering event with maybe like the application, like the app on the computer where that event happened, right? So now the app that it happened on is the bad thing, and that's the thing that needs to be avoided. That's not really practical, for anyone else to be dealing with. Okay. Um, or if you've now, have landmines of situations that server people just can't talk about anymore, right? Whole genres of stuff like, hey, all of, this horror movie genre, could be triggering so to one person, so we won't let anybody talk about it anymore. Like, no, that's really not. That would shut down, friendship and the possibility of like communication with other people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or if somebody came in was like, I got this phobia and it's super legit, it's a thing. We have no way to verify that or know. But could that get used to bully somebody else who is really into that thing? Absolutely. And so I don't, making sure that we're actually like addressing the people in our community, right? If somebody's, really like important thing and and is sharing about pets or something like that, and somebody's like, I hate rats. By the way, pet rats are super cute.
Okay? They are.
Just I really like them. All right. But if somebody came in and was like, no, like all rats are bad, this is triggering, and I'm like, wait a minute, but I'm not gonna prevent this person from posting about their pets when everybody on the server can post about their pets, right? Like that's where some of these dynamics I think are ways to kind of look at things.
So in YouTube chat, because I'm being a brat, Cream Bun Mommy says, I respect what you're saying, but sometimes it's damn near impossible for people, especially trans people, to get a therapist, let alone someone who's LGBT friendly. So we have a video that we can bring up that literally is about finding a therapist. I think it's a banging therapist. But basically what it is part of that is because many trans people don't know how to look for a therapist. Now, there's always the possibility that you have a geographic reason they can't.
Yeah.
But genuinely speaking, with help, it should be relatively okay to find somebody. Obviously, insurance and payment are issues. Things like that are always going to be things that we have to deal with. But I do think it is possible in most areas to find somebody. It just requires kind of more knowledge. So I check out that video if you can.
Sorry, yeah, just want to bring that up. Do it. I don't know if that really has a whole lot of bearing on the situation, to be honest.
No. It's just something someone brought up.
Yeah, again, it's still going to be down to personal responsibility. There are definitely cases where like you might need to pick and choose what you get your therapist for. I'm in one of those cases. I deal with a variety of things that are very difficult it would be very hard for me to find a therapist that is already like versed in all of it. That just would be nearly impossible. All right, so I'm gonna have to like expect that we work through some of the stuff as we go.
By the way, Rat King Socks, thank you so much for the tier 1 subscription. Pretty new here, but you all seem really calm, educational, but a fun atmosphere and fun takes. So take my money. Cool, thank you.
Keep posting pics, okay? I like the rats. They're so cute.
More rats for Zena.
There's one of them of like holding one of the rat's hands, and oh my god, they're so cute. They're like little bunnies. They're decently similar to rabbits, okay? They're just, oh my gosh, they're so good. Yeah. So that's where I think, we tend to do some like the big obvious ones, the general large violence ones, and again, even our stuff is still like, hey, how can we, still let people talk about things and work through things, but, not have it necessarily be like, hey, I'm going to run into this if I'm like just scrolling through here. Like if you're in sweet memes scrolling through it, like you're not expecting, gore or something. Like No.
Well, and again, like the thing here is like when we're talking about this the use of hypotheticals, I'll give a really like simple, brief kind of thought on this. I want you to look at how someone like RGR uses them. The way RGR uses a hypothetical is she constructs a scenario that immediately pushes you towards her point. If you look at all of the go back and watch the Doe debate. During that debate, RGR constructs a number of hypothetical scenarios about a fictionalized harm that really isn't demonstrable in any way. And because it's so out there abstractly, it turns into an issue of seeing someone in a cute outfit technically becomes non-consent in her system. Like, what? That's because the hypothetical isn't grounded in reality. And I don't mean that like in the non-compete sense where like a hypothetical has to be directly interacting with reality. No, you can do the aliens one, you dumbass. It's that it has to be relevant to what you're doing. We can use out there hypotheticals, but they have to lead somewhere that actually proves that point and doesn't frame the scenario in a very, very sort of shitty way. I think that's a thing. Like, I think that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem is like, this is why the non-compete Vosh thing was so weird, was because Vosh's hypothetical wasn't a problem, but they're all laughing and being like, yeah, that was dumb, aliens. Except his point was true. Like, at one point, how do you balance those things out? There's a real question about, like, how we mitigate harm and what things we choose to be aware of with harm. Has he stated it well in the past? No, it's been awful. But his point still stands. I think the issue here is that in a lot of ways, when we're making arguments, we need to say that hypothetical harm, for example, you have to just demonstrate it. For example, in this whole discussion we've been having on a larger scale about the transmasc issue, I've seen some transmasc folks make comments saying that the use of the term transmisogyny does harm. To which I always ask, how? Well, it's leaving them out. No, it's just describing a trans femme experience. That's it. Again, we come back to that weird thing we talked about with the general preference consent issue. Just because you're describing one person's experience doesn't mean you're diminishing another one's.
Yes.
Just because we had an entire stream talking about a Jewish perspective and a scholarly perspective doesn't mean that we're not going to listen to another group. It just means that was what the interaction was at the moment. But people, when they want to make their point, will sometimes do this thing where they will push with harm as a way to force the issue. It's an emotional appeal. So the thing I ask is, show me on the doll where the harm happened. Simple as that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the case. And again, you gotta show up to bang. Like I think that's our big thing, is actually like show up with this stuff.
Can I explain that term because we use it a lot?
I mean, Chess just used it. I kind of just glomped on.
So, whenever we get irritated with somebody in our Discord, or like when somebody on Twitter is really irritating us, and we really have to do some arguments, the response is, wait, so you wanted to fight me, but you didn't even come to bang. And so where that came from as a term is, I used to, with Hanging Wednesday, go to Buffalo Wild Wings and eat the living hell out of some wings while watching UFC. But here's the thing. Don't worry, Jawa. Here's the thing. There's a guy, and this is the way my friends describe him, because I don't follow anybody. I don't know who anybody is. In UFC, there was a guy named Nate Diaz, I think his name was. And this guy was apparently really good at jiu-jitsu, but refused to do ground game. He just wouldn't do things down below. He always wanted to do punch throws. And he'd be like, after the end of every fight or at the beginning of every fight, he'd be like, I came to bang. And it just became a joke between us. And so now it's sort of just come into our lexicon. So if anyone wants to give us an emote for I hope you came to bang or something like that, I would accept that now.
Well, like, that's the big thing with all of our arguments, is like, if you're arguing discourse with us, no, like, come fucking prepared. No, people, and this is everyone in general. It's not just one side or the other, but like, lots of people show up without actually having thought through their arguments, and then they say it, and then we push back on it, and then here we are. Somebody's upset. I'm cranky at the very least, because I'm like, I actually showed up here to argue with you, and you're saying dumb shit sometimes. Somebody's saying dumb shit, okay? It's just, I don't know, think through your arguments, right? Like, actually think through stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, and think through arguments, and also don't accept bad argumentation. Bad
That
argumentation
too.
in this case is with that segment we just did about the person and genital preference. You're asserting harm has happened. You've even given anecdotal suggestions. That's what they were, suggestions. There wasn't actually any real evidence. Like, this is the thing we have to be really careful of. Entropy fan said, hypothetically and realistically, trans women could assault in a bathroom or can assault in a bathroom. What is relevant is that are they more likely to do so as any other group? And the other answer to that is no. True. Like, could someone theoretically dress as a woman and go into a women's bathroom and assault somebody? Sure. But nothing's stopping them from doing it now. Hyrulean Hellhound said, don't pull out your thing unless you came to bang. True.
We do have a poster of logical fallacies, by the way, posted if you wanted to find that.
Yeah, we'll have to show that on stream. We should go over logical fallacies in the video.
Yeah, because we've used a lot of them so far, and
we talked about them. We haven't done
they're
them.
not used to. Well, we have said, like, hey, this is this fallacy, this is this one, right? That's where there's a whole bunch of these things, right, that you can pick out in arguments. You can watch out for them when you are making your own arguments, right?
Well, and again, this is where we get into the problem of, like, if a group is being harmed, or there's a way in which harm is happening, there should be an empirical way to just demonstrate that. We know this with trans people. People who are not allowed to transition, either socially or medically, have negative outcomes, more likely towards suicidal attempts, more likely to have negative quality of life. There are ways in which this hurts us. We can see that through evidence. So when you tell me that there's harm being done to somebody, I take that very fucking seriously. And much like calling everyone the P word or using gaslight wrong, this is the thing the left loves to do. Assert harm where there is none. Or they can't prove it, or they make a weird connection to an abstracted kind of harm and say this person is engaging in it. This is what literally has happened with so many videos calling out ContraPoints. She harmed non-binary people. No, a lot of dumb NBs didn't understand her damn arguments.
This is what happened to Lindsay Ellis too, right?
Yes.
Like, just complete misunderstanding of what was actually harm. And again, offense is not harm. That's a big one there.
We really do need to get back to book club and talk about conflict is not abuse, but Zena hated the voice on the road. Every time we went driving, the voice of the lady was really hard. We might have to get back at that. Same thing with Kinky Pride Discourse. True.
Yeah.
I'm saying, and again, we still had the best and most, and even the most conservative in the sense of, like, trying to be fair to everyone take. Even if we examine the idea that that's still, that there is some level of sexuality happening, you just do the two-state solution. Like, that's literally the perspective Vosh came to after his whole rant and being hyperbolic. Like, people that were anti-Kinky Pride literally moved to our position because it was the fairest one to everyone involved. Like, God,
you just be upfront with people about what is going to be at your event. And God damn it, if you are an activist or an event planner, you should know how to do this anyways. Done.
By the way,
if somebody's planning events and can't do it, don't go because they're shit.
By the way, if you're going to move to my arguments, I would like a dono to my GoFundMe. Thank you. That's a personal. So, with that said...
Yeah, we've kind of circled around my initial thing with, you know...
Is this just some sort of hypervigilance? It could be. It also could just be someone being emotionally manipulative, in my personal view.
As far as...
The use of hypothetical harm. I could see it being something where someone is hypervigilant to the idea of harm because they're part of a marginalized group.
In good faith in that they're showing up from a good place, I do think that's definitely a thing. There are definitely people that show up from bad places. It's understanding the reason is still, part of the decision-making process of how do I actually evaluate what harm is actually being done or could come from this. Yeah, I mean... So, I have a hard time wanting to give, like, large descriptions of, hypervigilance or emotionally manipulative to random people, especially people that approach us with, questions or, suggestions, things like that.
Sure. I can't say for sure in any given case.
Right, and then a lot of people I see other posts, I kind of get to know, like, what kind of things they've said before, so I have an idea. The thing with content warnings is that I think, at least on that topic, I think a lot of people are coming from a good place. They really want things to feel... They want people to feel safe and comfortable, and insecure in their interactions, right? Those are good things. Can in bad actors can come in with emotionally abusive stuff or emotionally manipulative stuff. I have heard about those stories too. So, it just depends on the situation. But again, that's why we tend not to do individual topics. We tend to do here's like the big, violence related things that we know, because again, this channel has a large focus on trans, mental health, and politics. We know that these are the large ones that people are going to deal with. We do what we can with those, but otherwise, a lot of the little random ones that an individual will have that we couldn't foresee, that's another story. So.
Someone in YouTube chat said, like, the person is hypervigilant and they're being manipulative. I mean, that's entirely possible. The problem is hurt people do hurt people. I know that's an old saying, but it is kind of true. Someone could, theoretically, because of their hypervigilancy, constantly try to assert this as a way to get care or whatnot. The problem with that is it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think no one's going to care about the harm being done and you're constantly asserting and embellishing the amount of harm, it's going to create that scenario. Right? Like, so I think that's all I got on this.
Yeah, that's...
So guys, yeah, just be aware of that. Be better at argumentation. We'll have to do that fallacy video next time.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I'll get out some more of my referee coach fallacy memes.
I found a cute one with the robots trying to take over the world about fallacy, using logical fallacies as arguments. So
no horny on the field, 10 bonks. Anyway, you guys have a good night, and we'll see you in the next segment. Bye. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.